Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here tonight. You know what it is. It's Tuesday night on a college football week. So that means my guy, Ryan Lankford, the official Format Podcast college football analyst, is going to be joining us to talk football, all things that he liked from last week, the new rankings, and big games, of course, that he's looking forward to this week. And boy, is there a big game this week? You're living under a rock if you don't know. But we'll get to that in just a minute. If you haven't already and you're here on YouTube, you know what time it is. Please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can be notified whenever new content drops here on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, please give us that like, that thumbs up, or whatever it is. If you also enjoy it, make sure you give us that 5-star review and leave us a comment either on your audio podcast platform or on YouTube. And make sure you share the podcast with other people you know, friends, family, enemies, whoever it might be that want to hear some good sports talk and maybe get away a little bit from everything that you hear in the mainstream sports media and just want to hear a different voice. But yeah, you do all that and you know what happens. Helps us rise up in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Bruce Hope, Ryan Lankford, college football. Let's go. All right, everybody, here we go. You know who it is. It's my main man, Ryan Lankford, the Format Podcast official college football analyst, the former Fighting Illini wide receiver, former Indianapolis Colt, and former Canadian Football League wide receiver and kick return specialist. Ryan, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us, bro.
What's going on? What's going on? Thanks for having me again. Glad to do
Abs-
it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, let's get right to it, man, because unfortunately the college football season is winding down on us, man. This is
Winding down. I
it's
know.
been great, man. But you know, we're getting to some of the biggest games of the year, so that's always a plus. And then of course, what we got college so let's see. This weekend is the final regular season,
Right.
and then I think next week we have college the conference championship games. Following
Mm-hmm.
week we got Army Navy, so that's always good. I love that one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
go Army, beat Navy all day. Got to make sure I say that.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, indeed. But that's always a good one. And then after that, we get into the bowl season. So we still
Mm-hmm.
got some shows to do, man. You ain't gonna get away
Mm-hmm.
that quick, man.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, let's talk about it. So we had some actually like maybe 3 or 4 good games last week,
Yeah.
kind of leading into this one, but obviously we know this weekend is the big one. But first, let's talk about Washington and Oregon State. I
Okay.
thought that was a real good game, really close. I didn't realize how close that had been over like the last 3 years or so.
Right.
Um, Michael Penix Jr., you know, I think he's the best quarterback in the country. He really started the season kind of on fire, but has kind of tailed off towards the end. I don't know if it's a function of just, you know, the brutal stretch of games Washington has had to go through, or is it, you know, teams have a lot of tape on him and they're really,
Mm-hmm.
you know, scheming up, trying to slow that elite offense down. But
Mm-hmm.
Washington keeps on winning and they escape with a 22-20 win over Oregon State. And Oregon State, this is a sneaky good team this year.
Yeah.
They were what number 11 going into that game. Outstanding defensive team, run the football really well with Damian Martinez, who's coincidentally a Doak Walker Award semifinalist, Doak Walker Award for the best running back in college football. Quick side note: before I get into this, let me rant for a second. Doak Walker Award, man. Audric Estime, Notre Dame's outstanding running back. He's probably going to be leaving here, heading to the NFL. He's not a semi-finalist for the Doak Walker. What the hell is going on there? That's absurd.
Real. So I didn't know who was in it, but I knew for
Mm-hmm.
sure he was in the rankings or in the talks at least.
You would have thought so, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying he should have won it, but he's not even a semi-finalist. Like, that's absurd.
Oh
That's
wow.
absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think if it's up to me, I think the guy that I would give the award to is Ollie Gordon III from Oklahoma State. That kid is an absolute
Yeah.
problem. Damian
Yeah. I like
Martinez,
him
he's a
too.
beast also. From Oregon State. We just talked about him. And
Hmm.
he ran 26 times for 123 against Washington. Really, really workmanlike effort. And that was good because that was one of those games where you really needed to be able to run it because of the weather. You know, the rain was really
Hmm.
coming down, you know, Pacific Northwest. By the way, you ever played out there in college?
Not all the way out there. I mean, other than yeah, not for college. We didn't go.
Okay.
We played Washington in Chicago,
Okay.
in the Bear Stadium. And
Okay.
I don't know what that game reason was, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the furthest West Coast team that we played. Just we're in
Gotcha.
Chicago.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're probably pretty used to that Pacific Northwest weather. You spent some time out in British Columbia, so
Yeah,
um
they had a dome,
oh,
but
did
I
they?
mean
Okay.
retractable
Okay.
roof. But most of the time, the weather it wasn't too bad. If it was
Mm-hmm.
raining, the roof would be closed.
Okay.
So we didn't have to truly get the elements.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. So
We
yeah.
practiced in it though. That was practice. Yeah, we had to deal with it practically.
Right, right. So tell me, what did you think of Washington against Oregon State?
Yeah, I thought it was a good game too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Oregon State kind of outplayed Washington in a sense. Like
Yeah,
they
I agree.
kind of like I don't know. They moved the ball well, but they
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't just make the plays to win the game. I think
Yeah,
Washington
yeah.
and their quarterback and their offense kind of took
Mm-hmm.
over. Um, what's the receiver's name? Dunze. I think
Yep. Yep.
he had a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
Two big touchdowns and then some key catches too, keeping
Yep.
drives going,
Yep.
keeping things playing. I remember they ran a few back shoulder balls, which are very nearly impossible to
Mm-hmm.
cover if you got the time with your quarterback. So
Right.
I think Washington looked strong, and that's really what took them over the top. But I think Oregon State played well,
Mm-hmm.
and gave them a chance to win. I would say.
Yeah, I think so. But again, man, DJU, that's DJ Uyunglele,
Yeah.
quarterback, Oregon State, transferred out from Clemson. He's got all the physical tools in the world, but he just doesn't always make the best decisions. And
Hmm.
those two picks will beat you. You got a game where
Hmm.
your defense is really hanging in there tough against one of the elite offenses in the country and really doing their thing, and you give the ball away twice, man. That's two extra possessions to the opposition. That'll hurt you.
Yeah, you got to be on. You can't lose a turnover battle. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the turnover battle was, but I mean, it was you can't turn it over when you're
No,
playing
you
a big
can't.
team in a big game and you want to win
Right.
games. So
Right. I
can't do
think it
that.
was 2-0 in favor of Washington. And as you know better than I do and better than most of us, man, you turn that thing over, you will lose, the majority of the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned Roman Dunze, 7 catches, 106 yards, and it's like when in doubt, go to that guy, right? Because he
No,
actually
definitely.
had the game sealing catch to
Hmm.
get the touchdown, not the touchdown. I'm sorry, the first down with about a minute left in the game, and Oregon State wasn't able to stop the clock, so Washington just knelt it down twice there. So I mean, that guy is so good, and I truly do, if Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name was John Smith, like would we
Mm.
be looking at him a little differently? Obviously, his skill level would be the same, his athleticism would be the same, but
Hmm.
would we be looking at wide receiver one in this upcoming draft a little differently? Because Roman Dunze is a stud.
Yeah, he looks good, but I also think, regardless of his name, Marvin
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Jr. is playing good football too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
He's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they are they're two great receivers that
Mm-hmm.
are going to have a really hopefully long career in the NFL and at the
Yeah,
next level. And
yeah.
I'm excited to see it for both of them.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, let's move on to I guess what maybe a lot of people thought was kind of the game of the day. I don't know if that's maybe a little East Coast bias talking, because again, that Washington Oregon State game we just talked about was incredible, but we
Hmm.
had the big noon game, and that was Michigan at Maryland, and well, Michigan pretty much they got away with one there. That was a tougher
Yeah.
game maybe than a lot of us would have expected. Maryland is a sneaky good team. I think
They
maybe
are.
the difference is they don't quite have the athletes to get over the top against the elite teams, and that may be kind of what happened here. But they
Hmm.
hung in there defensively. Michigan ran the ball 45 times, but they only got 150 yards. Now, 150 yards rushing will win you most games, but when
Hmm.
you're a team like Michigan that just hangs its hat on being extremely physical, the
Hmm.
Maryland rush defense really did a good job of standing up against that. Um, JJ McCarthy is very interesting. He, for most of the season, was looking really good, looking like a Heisman contender, one of the main ones, but the last few games against better competition, he has not looked the same at all. This
Hmm.
game, he was 12 of 23, 141 yards, and 1 interception, no touchdowns. So what were your thoughts on this game? Obviously, I enjoyed watching that. Been to a couple of games as a kid at Maryland, and
Yeah.
yeah, what were your thoughts there?
I was I was I was proud of Maryland. I think
Mm-hmm.
Maryland really hung in there. I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
thought Michigan would just go in there and kind of handle business, and
Yeah,
ultimately they did.
yeah,
But Maryland played well.
they did.
Michigan had to kind of be on their P's and Q's the entire game. I know they kind of jumped out there early, and then Maryland kind of battled back and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But I think that they had a really good showing for what people thought Maryland was going to do against them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did well.
And you know what's funny about that? Maryland played them extremely tight last year as well, and I think right in
Hmm.
this same spot immediately preceding the Ohio State game. So I don't know if Maryland says, "Hey, we can be the team that upsets these guys, going into Ohio State. We can make this a trap game." So, yeah, they did play extremely well. I mean, Blake Corum carried the ball. I mean, really tough effort, 28 times, but
Hmm.
only 94 yards. But still, 2 touchdowns. I think he's got 21 on the season now. That's another Doak Walker Award semifinalist.
Hmm.
Again, no
Hmm.
Audric Estime. But in all seriousness, Blake Corum's a stud. I don't know what he's going to be on the next level, but in college, he is one outstanding running back. But again, Michigan was able to get it done. They got 2 interceptions off of Tylua
Hmm.
Tungavaloa, excuse me. And so they came up with big plays where they needed it. Now, stat of the day for you. Michigan, their defense has allowed 5 passing touchdowns this season, and they've scored 6 touchdowns.
Mm.
Yeah, right. When you got a defense playing like that, you got a real good chance to win very often.
Wow. So giving up five, but defense themselves have scored
Yes, 6.
6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great
Yeah.
stat.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
That is. That
Yeah,
is.
it is. So, yeah, was there anything about this game that surprised you, stood out to you, kind of gave you cause to pause with Michigan going into this big one this week or anything like that?
Well, I think all the games, Michigan's kind of under a microscope, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. But again, the biggest surprise for me was how Maryland played. I think Maryland really kind of stepped up
Yeah.
to the challenge and gave themselves a chance to win. And I think that's always exciting to see. From a game when you think it's supposed to go one way and it goes a little bit tighter than expected.
Right. Mike Loxley is a really good coach. I mean, if you remember, he was OC under Saban at Alabama for some really high powered offenses, and
Hmm.
he's a really good recruiter. Now, where he is in that DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area is actually a lot more rich in talent than a lot of people realize. Like you
Hmm.
have obviously you have Florida, Georgia, California, and Texas are always the
Hmm.
top 4 states in the country for producing Division I talent in terms of football. And then Ohio, oddly enough, is like the only northern state that is
Hmm.
in that top 5. But that
Hmm.
DC metro area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, really produces a ton of talent as well. Caleb Williams came out of there, and that's the best conference in that area is the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference, WCAC, where they have schools like DeMatha, which is a beast in football and basketball, St. John's, Carroll, and a number of other programs. And so that that conference alone puts out a ton of talent. Coincidentally, I went to school in that conference. Shout out
Yeah.
Bishop
Yeah.
McNamara High School.
There
But
you
yeah,
go. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah, absolutely. Gonzaga, Caleb Williams went to Gonzaga. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that conference puts out a ton of talent, and Jonathan Franklin up at Penn State, he raids that area very regularly. But Mike Loxley, he's doing his thing in terms of recruiting and just trying to get Maryland into becoming one of the better programs. And coincidentally, that program now, Maryland, this is I think only the 3rd time in program history that 3 years in a row they're bowl eligible. So they've got to figure out how to get that upper tier elite talent to be able to get over the hump against the really good teams. But
Yeah.
he's doing his thing.
Yeah, he is. He is. And I want to say he was at Illinois prior to when I got there. I think when I was getting
Okay.
recruited, he was there. And even at Illinois, if that was, part of the kids he recruited, we had some guys that came from the Maryland area.
Okay.
And it's, you learn that they got football too. They got some
Yeah,
guys
they
that
do.
can play ball up there.
That's right.
So
That's right.
but yeah, I think Maryland, it was kind of missing just a few, those bigger
Mm-hmm.
players. When I say bigger, not size, just bigger, just
Yeah.
athlete, just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of fill the voids here and there. But I think you add two or three guys there, a few people on special teams, Maryland's could have won that game.
I agree. I agree. All right. So next up, Georgia. Georgia. How good is this team?
They're
They
rolling.
are. I was just about to say they're rolling. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Carson Beck, 298 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Georgia beats Tennessee 38-10. Another thumping. Like
Hmm.
this is getting scary now. If you're not an SEC fan or you're not a Georgia fan, early in the season you were thinking like, okay, but now they're looking like they're in prime position to
Yeah.
possibly go ahead and three-peat. So we've talked about Carson Beck the last couple of weeks, and what's getting to me is now I'm no scout, but he's already, in my estimation, looking better than Stetson Bennett has ever looked in leading Georgia
Mm,
to 2 national championships in a row. And that's scary. Now, I think
mm,
to the point we discussed it, Georgia's defense is not quite the same, but now their
hmm.
offense looks better. And it's really weird because they don't have the elite names on the outside that Beck is throwing to. But between Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey, they're just doing
They're
their
making
thing, and they
names.
are
They're
yeah,
making
correct,
names.
correct.
Yeah. It's almost like how Brady was just using those no-name receivers up
Right.
there and dominating, making
Mm-hmm.
them names, making them players. And that's a great point. I think Georgia is really good. I'm at a point now where I'm just waiting on the SEC championship versus Bama.
Yeah, yeah,
Alabama's getting stronger and stronger every week.
yeah. Yep.
And I'm very interested to see what that SEC championship will look like
Mm-hmm.
and what the country will look like if Alabama wins that game.
That is going
Then
to
what can
be
happen? This is why I watch the games and I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah,
committee.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. I think
Because it could be done. Now, tough game.
mm-hmm.
But we've seen crazy things happen when it's time for things to go down. So
I think if Alabama beats Georgia, then we're gonna see Alabama and Georgia in the 14 playoff.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Which is absurd because if you ask me, if Texas wins out and wins the Big 12, they should get in over Alabama simply by virtue of
Hmm.
they beat them head to head in their stadium. But when it comes down to the SEC, who's going to get the nod?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
you know, yeah, that's going to be crazy. But yeah,
But
Jim.
Georgia's looking strong. Georgia's
Oh, they
Georgia's
look
like
good.
like we said, they rolling. They
Yeah,
rolling
they are
now.
rolling. And so here's another interesting stat. Georgia is the first team to go unbeaten in the SEC 3 years in a row since the league went to an 8-game schedule in 1992. Three
Really,
years in a row unbeaten in the conference. That
that's
that says
strong.
something. Yeah,
That's strong.
yeah. And they've got a
That's strong.
28-game SEC winning streak.
That's strong. That's
Yeah,
strong. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
they're rolling. They are rolling. They are
They
the
are
the
rolling.
team to beat right now, and I think they've definitely earned
Yeah.
where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, man, I would. It's gonna be so good. And Texas is a team. If they get in, they got a chance to win that thing. Because again, we saw what they did at Alabama. Now, of course, Quinn Ewers being healthy would be a big piece of that. But
Hmm.
if they get in, they got a chance. If Michigan gets in, they got a chance. The way Ohio State is now playing, if they get in, they got a
They
chance.
got a
Now,
chance too.
now they don't have CJ Stroud anymore, so
Hmm.
that's gonna hurt. So man, this is this is actually pretty interesting down the stretch here to see how it's all gonna play out. But looking
Yeah,
forward to it. Some really
yeah.
good
Me
teams
too.
down here. Yeah,
Me too.
yeah. All right. So now, on a more somber note, Florida State was number 4 going into the weekend, and they won, but they lost their Heisman candidate quarterback, Jordan
Mm,
Travis. Looked like a pretty gruesome leg injury there.
yeah.
That's tough. And what I want to ask you about when you have your leader go down with an injury like that, and you played football long enough, so I'm sure you've been in these shoes. When you have your
Mhm.
team leader and arguably the best player on your team go down with an injury like that, how does it affect the team on the field in terms of morale, in terms of preparation? We know that football is the ultimate next man up type game, but
Mhm.
how do you move past, that injury and the care for your teammate to say next man up, we still got to compete, we still got to prepare? Talk to me a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, well, you never want to see that. You never want to see injuries go down, and my prayers are out to him that he gets speed of recovery and is able to mentally play at the level that he was playing to
Yeah.
yet prior to the injury, because that's a thing that happens that people overlook as well. But it hurts the moral. It hurts it always kind of takes the air out of the team in that moment, just because you've been rolling. You're on a hot streak. We're having a chance to go to the national championship, win it. This is our quarterback, Heisman Trophy leader. That we've got all the pieces.
Right.
But also we always talk about in every locker room, they talk about you got to be prepared for your moment, next man up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take all of us to win. Now, you don't
Yeah.
know exactly who it's going to be in what capacity, but now that's changing now that they're going to have to bring in a new quarterback. And that's tough. You've made it this far, and that quarterback has been in the shadow, doing the backup reps, doing the practice reps, hopefully mentally getting ready for his
Mm-hmm.
time. But it's very easy to have a great player in front of you and you don't take the true necessary reps that you should be taking because of how great the leader is in front of you. So that's going to be really interesting to see. Interesting to see with the rest of the season, especially with them going to the swamp this week. I believe they play Florida, and that's going to be it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna
Yeah.
be a lot
Yeah.
because Florida's gonna be juiced up. They're
Oh
knowing
yeah.
that they're kind of playing a man down now,
Mm-hmm.
and they got to come home and they got to come to us at night. I think it's a night game too, so
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be it's
Rivalry
gonna be
game. Yeah.
it's gonna be hostile. So,
Yeah.
hopefully that quarterback can come in and command the huddle, command his team, lead him, and get a win because it'll be good for the morale and it'll be good for Florida State as a whole, just to,
Right.
to kind of get some belief here rolling on into the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, that's tough, man. So, earlier tonight, the new college football playoff rankings were released, and as we probably would have expected, Georgia remains number one,
Mhm.
Ohio State number two, Michigan number three. Washington finally moves into the top four. They are number four now. Florida
Wow.
State drops to number five, and Oregon number six. Now, I'll tell you this: Florida State is really good. They're undefeated, so I get why they're five, but I think that in a head-to-head, Oregon would beat them. I think Oregon is a really good football team, and I am truly looking forward to. Now, that's providing that Washington survives the Apple Cup this weekend against Washington
Mhm.
State. I'm looking forward
Mhm.
to that Pac-12 championship game. Again, the final one as we know it between Washington and Oregon. That'll be a rematch. Washington won, I think, by 3 the first time around. That was like week 6.
Mhm.
And that's going to be a heck of a game. I keep singing Dan Lanning's praises in terms of how he's built that team, physical, run the football, rush the passer. Bo Nix doesn't make mistakes. I mean, he's also like 137 years old, but
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
He
but
is. He's been around.
yeah, I think he started the most games in college football history at quarterback. So I think he
And that
started like
helps. That I
55,
mean,
56 games.
experience.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't coach. I mean, you can coach experience. I don't know what the saying is, but experience definitely
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
helps you in moments like this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so Texas, we were just talking about them, number 7, Alabama, number 8,
Mhm.
Missouri, number 9, and Louisville, number 10. So quick note. See, this is the stuff that gets me. And Fox Sports One college football analyst Joel Klatt was talking about this earlier in the week, or I guess last week, late last week. Missouri is number 9 in the nation at 9-2. Why are they number 9 in the nation at 9-2?
Yeah.
Take a guess why. I'll tell you why. They're in the SEC. No, no, no. Real talk. They're in the SEC, and Georgia beat them, right? So with 2
Mhm.
losses, they're number 9 in the country. But guess what that does? That props up Georgia, right?
Mhm.
Alabama also beat them, right? So now
Mhm.
what they're going to use is if Alabama jumps Texas, that's another highly ranked win that they can use to prop up Alabama, right? This
Mm,
is what the rankings seem to do every year. If you really pay attention to how they work, there are
mm,
some SEC teams that should not be where they are, but they're there so that they can prop up the other SEC teams that they want. And so what's going to happen, like I mentioned, Georgia, I think is getting into the playoff no matter what, unless they maybe like
hmm.
lose the next two, which is not going to happen, right? But
Right.
even if they lose to Alabama, what's probably going to happen is Alabama and Georgia get in, which again is absurd because of
Hmm.
the Texas beating Alabama at Alabama. But yeah, this is what they do. Now Tennessee has 4 losses on the year, right? They're still
Hmm.
ranked. They're number 21. Why? Georgia beat them, Alabama beat them, right? So now
Hmm.
that's another ranked win for Georgia and Bama. You see what I'm talking about here?
I do.
This
I
this is
do.
what
I
they do.
do.
Now you can call it conspiracy theory all you want, but we see this
Hmm.
year after year. Interesting,
Hmm.
isn't it?
No, it is, and I've never um, looked at the numbers like that. I never
Mhm.
looked at it from that scope,
Yep.
and and that's interesting.
Yeah. LSU has 3 losses. They're number 14 in the country. It's what they do.
Mm,
Yeah, you pay
mm,
attention to this
mm.
stuff, my man. I'm trying to tell you. But but yeah, so you've got that going on. But I think I'm really happy to see Washington finally get into the top 4. And
Yeah.
let's say that the rankings remain how they are. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Washington. Now, Michigan, Ohio State, probably the loser of that is going to end up dropping out of the top 4 because
Hmm.
again, uh you're still going to have Texas. If they win out the rest of the way,
Hmm.
they'll probably end up climbing in. So this is going to be, but then if Florida State doesn't lose, right? Like, how do you drop them out? This is going to be really neat to see how the committee plays this. And
Yeah.
this is why I say I want to see what they do, because I'd love to hold their feet to the fire and say, hey, wait a minute. Last
Hmm.
year, you made decisions based on this. Last
Right.
week, you made decisions based on that. What are you doing? You're
Hmm.
going against your own decision making process. What's go? And that is why, and I say this all the time, and I don't want to get into a soapbox thing here, but that's why the committee refuses to release the criteria that they utilize to make these choices, because
Mm,
they don't want to have to be held to account for what they do. That, and they
hmm.
want people like us to be sitting here debating on it every week, right?
Talking about it, right?
That's
That's right.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but is there anything in that top 25 for the college football playoff that you see that you like or that you think is crazy?
um, you pointing out the SEC kind of talk, I think it's a note for craziness. I think
Hmm.
that's a good way to look at it. I am happy to see Washington kind of
Me
get
too.
their moment, if you will. I think they could have been there by
Hmm.
now, to be honest. But I think that again, there's a lot of different standards that we don't
Yeah,
exactly know how they
yeah.
break it down. But I think that they have played consistent, good football, enough to be where they're at now.
I
So
agree.
I'm excited about that, and
I agree.
we'll see how these last weeks go, and then these championship games go, and then the real stuff happens.
Right, right. So I was thinking if and I know it's still a little early for prognosticating, but if it ended up that Washington was number 4 and Georgia was number 1 going into this thing,
Hmm.
Georgia's defense, like we talked about, is not it's not the it's not the put you in a sleeper defense of a couple of years ago. But
Hmm.
Brock Bowers, not Brock Bowers, Carson Beck can really throw this thing and they can score a lot of
Hmm.
points. I wonder if Washington could survive a shootout with Georgia. I wonder,
Hmm.
because we
Hmm.
know that Washington's got the firepower to go blow for
Yeah.
blow with pretty much anyone.
Yeah, I think they can. I think they can. I think it's gonna come down to quarterback play
Hmm.
and special teams. Because
I keep forgetting who I'm talking to.
I think what's
Special
gonna happen
teams.
is, it's gonna be those three and out drives are gonna hurt because those
Yes.
three and out drives with a punt, and if they drive a long drive and score a touchdown, that's now you just shortened your ability to score. So
Hmm.
you're gonna have to put points on the board every time if this was to happen, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, of
And
course.
then someone's gonna have to make a play, either a defense doing a pick six or a
Hmm.
fumble or a safety. One of those out of the ordinary scores are gonna have to happen
Hmm.
for the team to win the game. So
Yeah.
I would love to see that game personally because I
Hmm.
think Washington could keep up.
Yeah.
Probably at a, I guess it's not considered a neutral site, but shouldn't be an issue.
Right.
So
Right.
you know what I mean? So it should be
Mm-hmm.
good on good, if you will.
Yeah. 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 Another one I'd love to see, and then we'll kind of move on from this. I would love to see, depending on how it plays out, like an Oregon versus Michigan, because I think
Yeah.
they are built so similarly. That's
So similar. Yep.
yeah, that's
Yep.
strength on strength right there, and I think that would be. You want to talk about smash mouth? Woo, that's
Yeah.
that right
Yeah.
there. You
And
know.
I think they line up well, like player to player,
Yeah.
playmaker wise. They you know
Mm-hmm.
they're pretty, like you said, they're pretty evenly matched, and
Mm-hmm.
both have their glimpses of speed, both have their tricks and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be
Yeah.
good. And no hardball too. That's just gonna add a little extra
Right.
fire for Michigan.
Absolutely.
So
And
yep,
then,
yep.
you have teams with two elite defensive lines and outstanding
Mm-hmm.
offensive line. Yeah, just really
Mm-hmm.
good matchup, strength on strength. I'd love to see that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think it would be a whole lot of, tossing it all over the yard. We would see who can really
Yeah,
get
no.
down in the trenches and prove it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree.
Absolutely. Okay. So here's the big thing. Now, let's get to it. This Saturday we have the biggest rivalry in college football.
Mm,
Arguably the most animus filled. I know everyone thinks theirs is. You got the Civil War, Oregon State. You got the Apple Cup, Washington, Wazoo. You got the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama. You mentioned it
mhm,
earlier, Florida State, Florida. All these are fantastic rivalries. I get it, no
mhm.
question. But I don't think there's anyone like the game, and that's
Yep.
Michigan and Ohio State. And you being a Big Ten guy, I know you understand the magnitude of this, especially pretty much with a berth in the Big Ten Conference Championship game and
Mhm,
pretty much a berth in the playoff on the line.
mhm.
Give me your initial thoughts, because give me your initial thoughts on this game. And secondly, how important, and this is the key here, is Jim Harbaugh's absence from this game? He can't be on the sideline. He can't coach.
Big game. Big game, big rivalry. I think when you think of rivalries, this is like that classic, just college football. You just
Mm-hmm.
remember seeing the old classic football tape. You just cut on the TV, and it's these
Mm-hmm.
two teams, kind of going at it.
Yeah.
I think Harbaugh's absence is going to be big. It's going to be important, but I also think too this team is kind of used to his absence already.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're kind of adjusting to him not being there.
Mm-hmm.
They're adjusting to a different face of the program, if you will, and they're still using Harbaugh's absence and situation as fuel.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's going to be something that they're going to continue to use. Um, and it's gonna be a good game. I'm excited to see it. I think, like you said, the winner is really going to determine where they go next and who goes.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these teams honestly have a chance to win this game, and if they get in, go on to give a chance for the title.
Yeah.
I think both of them have that ability.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I'll tell you, um, you know, one of the knocks on Ohio State and Ryan Day in this program over the last few years is that it kind of got too finesse. And we talked about this earlier in the season with,
Hmm. Hmm.
with the elite quarterback play and the elite wide receiver play, but they've gotten back down to playing a lot more physical. Ohio State's offense is not nearly what it has been in the last few years. Now, it much like Georgia is rounding into shape. But they're paying much more attention to pounding the football between the tackles and being physical
Hmm.
up front, offensive, defensive lines. I think that Michigan is not going to manhandle Ohio State the way they have for the last couple of years. But this is going to be something. This is going to be something.
Yeah.
I don't know if you touched on it. How important is not having Jim Harbaugh on the sideline? Because let's remember, he's not the play caller on offense or defense. So
Hmm.
how important is that going to be? He's preparing his team all week. He's able
Hmm.
to, run practice and work the game plan and all that. He just
Hmm.
can't
Hmm.
be on the sideline. Where are you
Hmm.
on that? How
Hmm.
important is that?
I think it's not as important as the general population would assume. And I
Really?
only say that because he hasn't he hasn't been there recently,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like he's been dealing with all this stuff. So they're getting used to not having him um physically there on the sideline. They've got someone else basically running the head coach right now. So I think
Mm-hmm.
they're going to use that his absence isn't there as fuel. They're gonna pitch all week of, hey, this is our moment. We're gonna have to beat this. This is truly gonna test us and see if we really have the ability to go on and win the national championship. So um, it is gonna affect it, but I don't think it's gonna affect them so bad that they're not gonna be able to play good football because he's not on the sideline.
Hmm. So I would think that where that's going to have a major effect is those, not necessarily the game plan and not necessarily okay, play to play game calls, but those very specific situations, right? The major
Yeah.
situational times, things that coordinators don't normally have to handle, like you know timeout management, or
Mm-hmm.
when to call a particular trick play we have, or should we
Mm-hmm.
punt or go for, should we kick or go for
Mm-hmm.
two here, or
Mm-hmm.
things like that that a head coach normally handles. How much do you think that you can prepare an assistant or a coordinator to handle those type of in-game
Mm-hmm.
duties?
Well, I think how I would do it, I'm not head
Hmm.
coach.
Right.
Harbaugh probably has already in his mind knows who his go-to guys are.
Okay.
If I'm head coach, I'm bringing in the entire staff, and I'm really not even bringing the whole staff. I'm bringing the OC and the DC,
Hmm.
and we're just going to talk stuff, and we might talk situational football. We might
Right.
put the tape on and say, "Hey, we're here in this situation. What do you think?"
Hmm.
Okay, that will work. I like this. Boom, boom, boom. I like this. How do we want to do this? And what we don't know, we don't even know if how their play calling is ran throughout the year. And when I say play calling, there's situational football because it might come down to in a situation that the OC really makes the call or the DC
Hmm.
really makes the call or the Harbaugh lets his coaches coach. Because again, if
Hmm.
I was a head coach, that would be my job. I'm gonna bring people in to do their job. I'm gonna bring in an
Hmm.
OC who knows how to handle the ball in situation. I'm gonna bring a DC who studies the offense, who studies who we're playing, who knows how to handle stuff in situations, and they just use me as what you think that work, and I'm like, cool, the cool, and I'm letting them be their professional, if that makes sense. So I think when you got guys in place like that, they should be able to do what they need to do. But it's gonna be different. It's gonna be different, but I still feel like they will have something in place because they've been practicing all week without it. They've known that he's not going to be there. They've known he's not going to be there for a week. There's probably been other situations in games where they might have been used to having Harbaugh there, but they had to make new adjustments. Of okay, well, he's not here. This guy
Hmm.
makes the call. Hey, he's not here. You make the call. So they'll be prepared, and I
Hmm.
think that it's still going to be a great game.
um JJ McCarthy has pretty much carved up Ohio State over the last 2 years. He's never lost to him, and it's been a while since a Michigan quarterback could say that. And he's really put up big numbers against these guys. Do you
Mhm.
think that he can continue to do that? Because as I mentioned earlier, over the last few games against tougher competition, he has not looked great. Do you think he's going to be able to have a big game again this year? Because they're going to need him to, I think.
Yeah, they're gonna need him to, and he has to,
Hmm.
especially kind of being the underdog. He's gonna have to do that. And I only say underdog just by where they're ranked at,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's gonna take. He's gonna have to be on, and I think he also is hearing the chatter. He's hearing people say that he hasn't been on. They're saying that yeah, they know when this big game comes, yeah, JJ, he just can't do it. He can't do it,
Hmm.
and so
Hmm.
he's any great player is going to use that for fuel, going to use that as a reason to go a little bit harder because this could be their moment to win and go all the way.
Right.
And you can't afford to not capitalize on that. So I'm hoping that he's able to kind of put the naysayers to the side and make
Hmm.
some plays for his team.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we got to look at there as well is that this could be a situation which literally decides whether or not he comes out and leaves school to go to the NFL. He's a
Right.
junior, and if he, caps this off with a miraculous run, then beats Ohio State with a big game,
Yeah.
then wins another conference championship. That'd be three in a row, and then
Yep.
let's just say makes a run to the national championship. He's gonna have to go, right? I mean,
He's got
I
to
would
go.
think so.
I think you got to go too. Yeah. Because at that point,
Hmm.
they're going to be talking like, hey, he's ready because he did
Hmm.
it. We had the doubters, and he beat Ohio State, and then he beat
Hmm.
I guess who's in Big Ten? Iowa's in Big Ten championship. Beat
Yeah,
Iowa
that's what it's
maybe.
gonna. That's what it looks like. Yeah, Iowa.
Beat
Hmm.
Iowa and we took the boys on a run, and now he's ready to go. So
Mhm.
I could see that happen. I could see that happen. And I could also see them. Nah, he wouldn't do that. I wouldn't say he will win and say, "Oh, I'll come back." Some guys do that, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
in this moment, in this era of college football and
Mhm.
just NIL deals and just how the landscape is going, that would be the
Yeah,
way for him to go out.
yeah. Well, there you go. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this one pretty much all year. And now this is it. And it's almost time for the game. And
Yep.
man, it's gonna be amazing. And again, I think it's a noon game. I don't
I
know
think it
what's
is.
the
Yeah. I
yeah.
think it is. It
I
is.
I
Yep, 12
guess
noon, Fox.
mhm. I'm only assuming that Fox knows what they're doing in putting this game at noon because last year was at noon as well, and that was the most watched game all season,
Mhm.
of anyone. So I guess they know what they're doing. Although it would be so amazing to see that as a night game. But when it's a night game, you got to compete with other big games and whatnot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Because I think,
yeah,
Florida State's that's ESPN, though, that's night
yeah,
game.
right, right.
Bama might be daytime, or could be Iron Bowl could be
Iron
either.
Bowl is probably like that 3:30 time slot.
Yeah,
That's
yep, that's probably
normally
right.
where that falls. Yeah.
Yep,
Well,
yeah.
Well, there we go. All right, Ryan. Well, listen, man. Again, fantastic stuff. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming in and dropping the knowledge on us, man. We appreciate that. And we are looking forward so much to another great weekend of college football.
Yes, sir, I'm ready.
All right, there it is. So, we'll be back again next week to discuss the rankings, to discuss this game and discuss the other games and see what we get. So if you're here on YouTube, you know what time it is, man. Make sure you go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell. All right. Thank you for staying with us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies, whoever it is. And we're out. Peace.